Welcome to the Parkland Report. I'm Stephanie Stewart, Vice President for Communications and External Affairs here at Parkland College, and today I'm joined on the Parkland Report by Dr. Ramage and Executive Vice President Dr. Pam Lau.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
Exciting to be here.
Yeah.
This might be the first time you've been called Executive Vice President.
I know, it's a little early.
Very good.
I get to use the new title today.
Oh, okay.
So thanks for coming on the show. I'm excited to have both of you on today, and there's a special reason why we have both of you together on the show, and that's because there's some transition planning underway. Dr. Ramage, can you share a little bit about what's happening at Parkland in terms of planning for the future?
Sure. Well, I guess the start of it is I've announced a retirement date for myself, which is a bit away. It's not till the end of 2022. And I had to announce that a little bit early for a number of different reasons, but it was a good time to start a discussion with the Board of Trustees about really what was supposed to happen next, or what might happen next. Transition's always a tough time for an institution. You don't know who's coming where and when, and you wonder about what sort of person will be selected, and it could be a very difficult time. Fortunately, those discussions started pretty early with the board, and one of the things the board was interested in is it was minimizing the trauma of that transition, or the potential trauma of that transition.
Lots of uncertainty, right?
Absolutely. And there's a number of other changes that are probably going to occur in that same general time frame, 3 to 4 years out. So what can we do to minimize that while building on the reputation the institution has? And very, very fortunately, and to nobody's surprise, we had a very strong candidate internally. So the discussion with the board was really quite simple. The day I exit, there is a possibility or a potential to have a president designee waiting right to step into the office the next day. That was discussed quite a bit by the board, and they decided that was a good idea. They had a discussion with Dr. Lau, and this executive vice president title is sort of an intermediary step. So for the next 3 or so years, Pam will do a couple of things. She'll transition the next person in who fills her job, and also work with me a little bit closer on president's stuff, whatever that means, and be ready to take the job over in January of 2023.
Wonderful. That's a great summary. So yeah, it's really an interesting way that the board has really decided to move forward on this transition planning, but what a benefit it is to have that time. But Dr. Lau, a lot of people may not know you in this new role, so can you share a little bit about your history at Parkland and the role that you have now that you've stepped into Executive Vice President?
Well, I've been at Parkland for quite a while. I first came to Parkland in 1995, and I came in as a part-time faculty member teaching developmental reading. It was, I remember, my introduction to community college, to Parkland. It was a very, very good experience. It gave me a side of higher ed that I had not been familiar with. I originally came to this country as an international student. I grew up in a different culture. I benefited from a very different educational system. So here at Parkland, as the communities college, I was able to see how we take students from wherever they are. It doesn't matter how old they are, how young they are. It doesn't matter whether they are at the top of their class, the middle of their class, or they didn't have good educational experiences. But that was my introduction to Parkland, that here we prepare students for their next step. So I taught part-time, and then I became a full-time faculty in year 2000. And then in 2006, we put together what is now called the Center for Academic Success. People call it CAS, people call it D120. For those who are students in the audience, we started CAS in 2006. There were several of us who worked for a year to dream of what would it be like to have a place where students outside of their classes can come and get support for their classes, to learn together, and also to have some advising so that they didn't have to go all over the place, that all in one place we were able to have a mix of expertise to serve our students, to make sure that people are supported and that our students will be successful. And then after 4 years in CAS, then I became Dean of Academic Services, and currently I am the Vice President for Academic Services. So people ask me what I do, and I say, well, this is an academic institution, and we offer programs, and we have classes, and we have a wonderful team of faculty. And what I do is I basically make sure that the systems all go so that we can have the teaching done and the students can have their learning, and that we're able to offer programs that are relevant to the student.
Wonderful. And you'll retain some of those Vice President of Academic Services type role in your Executive Vice President role, right? You're keeping Chief Academic Officer.
For a while, until we have transitioned my successor over. So for the next 3 years, I'm going to, I tell people I'm going to buy a set of training wheels, and so I'm going to learn what it's like to be a president. But at the same time, I will be training someone to take over my work as Chief Academic Officer. And somewhere in the middle of that transition time, that person will fully become the Vice President for Academic Services and take on the Chief Academic Officer role.
Yeah, sounds like a smooth transition.
Yes, and I think that's the plan. That there'll be no surprises along the way, so that nobody starts the role and on day one says, "Oh, what am I supposed to be doing here?" That we will be able to do that.
Great. So, Dr. Ramage, how will the decision-making process work, right? You're training Pam to be able to step into that role, and you guys have that time together, but talk a little bit about how that might change or how it will impact the institution.
We've tossed around a few ideas. We went from dice to lots to random draws of slips of paper with answers on them. No, I'm kidding. We have worked together for a number of years now, so we sort of know how each other operates. I think the agreement, the understanding, or at least for the next 3 years, is that any sort of large decision that wouldn't normally be in the Chief Academic Officer's realm, we'll talk about it. And those decisions will likely be made jointly, maybe more so in favor of Pam's decision-making process the further we get in. But I'll be here till the day I retire, and obviously stay in the current position, and will intend to fully execute all the duties that are and responsibilities that a president is supposed to have. So I think the short answer is not much will change, because we already sort of do things that way. We have a group of 4 vice presidents that meet weekly for an extended period of time, and we talk about all the things that are going on at the institution, everything that requires some sort of position statement or decision. Obviously there's somebody that has to make the final decision if there's controversy, and usually that's the president, but not always. So we're accustomed to dealing with issues, decisions as a team. And that remains certainly unchanged. What Dr. Lau does as of January of 2023 remains to be seen, but we'll see what happens then.
So, Dr. Lau, when this opportunity came to you, what was your reaction? What were the things that you really needed to consider before stepping into a role like this, particularly as president designee, knowing that one day you would take on this job that you've been observing Dr. Ramage do for a number of years?
One of the big things that I had to consider was whether I was willing to take that, I would call it the change of perspective. As the Chief Academic Officer, I am primarily inward focused, in that I am making sure that our systems for offering classes, for having the best faculty, for having a good learning environment for students, that's my purview. And we do outside stuff, but most of it is inward. We do outside stuff when we want to talk to people in the community, to talk about the relevance of our programs to their employment needs, and things like that. But on the whole, I'm primarily inward looking, whereas the president is very much the public face of the institution. And so that was one of the biggest things I had to ask myself. Do I want to make that switch or not?
Yeah, definitely big shoes to fill, and then also that public-facing component, and the questions that come, and the accountability to not just Parkland, right, but beyond, and the community at large.
I'm not sure that there's anything that you can really do ahead of time to prepare for that. Certainly the best thing you can do is know the institution, and certainly Pam has that, but that just comes with meeting people, attending different sorts of meetings, chit-chatting a bit, and going to events. That's the only way it happens.
So this is a question for both of you, and maybe in a different angle for each. So as you look to the future, so Dr. Ramage over the next 3 years, and then Dr. Lau over the next 3 years and beyond, what do you see in terms of Parkland's future and the future of community colleges in general? What's
Sure.
on the horizon?
Well, from my perspective, the number one on the list is enrollment and program growth. So there's a national trend around enrollment where we're seeing fewer students come to both universities and community colleges, higher ed in general, across the country. And there's a lot of reasons for that, from a declining birth rate in the country to maybe students making different decisions about what they do right out of high school. And it's a sort of a complex issue. The goal, or my goal, is to ensure that Parkland College stays relevant, that the programs that we continue to offer, that we've had for a long time, are of sufficient quality to keep attracting the students who would be attracted to those programs, and then to look maybe beyond what we've normally done, what we've traditionally done for the last 52 years academically. What programs are likely to be in demand in the next 3-4 years, how we can anticipate employer needs, and build programs that are attractive to students maybe in a different way than we have in the past.
Great.
That's number one.
Number one.
I would say ditto to all of that, because certainly those are the things that I work with the academic deans on a daily basis to sort of sharpen our focus of what we're going to do. You know, there's a lot of talk out there about the value of higher education, and higher ed certainly remains valuable in so many different ways that we've always been there to prepare students who come out of high school to gain new skills, in whether it's in expertise in curriculum or in just thinking as a citizen of how you participate in a democratic society. That all of that remains very important to us. But at the same time, we are also seeing that in this country there is a turn for, can I say, a pragmatic turn, that the value of higher education also has to be whether our students, when they leave us with a credential, they are ready for with certain competencies that are required in the workplace. And that remains, I think, a very important part of what we do, always retooling, relooking at what we have to see whether we are actually meeting those needs, and maybe coming into stronger partnerships with employers so that we can work together with them, so that as students are going through our programs, it's not just they're learning what we want to teach them, but we are actually in partnership with employers to really think in terms of a curriculum, so that when students leave us, they will have those competencies and they can look back and they'll say their time at Parkland was more than valuable, very well worth it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Lau, for being on the show. When we return, we'll speak more in depth with Dr. Ramage about what's new at Parkland this year and what we can look forward to moving forward. Thank you. Welcome back to the Parkland Report. I'm Stephanie Stewart, and I'm here with Dr. Ramage talking about what's new at the college this year. We sit down annually and have these conversations to kick off a new academic year. And one of the things that's gotten some news coverage fairly recently has been our Institute of Aviation. So I wanted to talk about what's been happening with aviation. How has that evolved over the last few years?
Sure. Well, the planes are flying every day, even on the weekends, which is a great thing. Good news is, well, we're in our 4th year of operating the Institute for Aviation, which we took over from the University of Illinois. We have more students than we have available faculty, which is a great problem to have. So basically we have a waiting list of students. Our chief problem at the moment is that certified flight instructors are very hard to come by. So there's allegedly a national shortage of pilots, and everybody that is capable of flying an airline has probably been recruited in to fly for some airline somewhere. So that means that there's a shortage of people who are working in flight training programs, and we're certainly feeling that here. Doing everything we can to recruit, but it's a bit of a challenge. We have approximately 90 students enrolled in anywhere from the private pilot, which is the very beginning of the course, all the way through commercial and multi-engine certifications that prepare students to be ready to be airline pilots.
So there's some lucrative careers, though, for them.
Absolutely.
Those airlines have some incentives. You want to talk a little bit about what you're seeing in the industry?
Allegedly, not too long ago, and not too long is like 3 or 4 years, the pilots that flew the smaller regional jets, like from Champaign to Chicago or Champaign to Dallas, weren't paid very well, somewhere in the $30,000 to $40,000 range, which seems a little low for the person who's controlling an aircraft with 80 lives in it in a complex airspace. Those starting wages have pretty much doubled in the time that we've had the program because of this shortage. So older pilots, people who have retired, earlier recruiting of younger pilots into certain airlines through incentives, all of that is on the table now. So there's some pretty hefty signing bonuses. I saw one the other day, I think it was a $116,000 signing bonus, which is
Pretty substantial.
Pretty good incentive to join an airline.
Especially if there's been a substantial investment in the education as well.
Right.
Those students are, there are lots of kind of fees associated with that type of
Right.
work, just given the nature of the airline
Flying
industry.
is not cheap. Well, first of all, the airplanes are fairly expensive in and of themselves. Gas is not cheap, especially aviation fuel. And then the maintenance component of it is, it all adds up. So there's some, as you're right, there's some pretty significant course fees associated with becoming a pilot, especially a commercial pilot.
So great for the students as they graduate and somewhat challenging for us.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, well, and there's other things as well. Simulators, flight simulators reduce the amount of time that a student spends in an airplane flying, which cuts down on the cost. But the simulators themselves are very, very expensive, somewhere in the neighborhood of $350,000 for a complex simulator that is certified by the FAA.
But luckily we have some assets in our community that help contribute to that, and local partners. Can you talk a little bit about those connections?
Sure. We just happen to be in the same community as I think the world's leading simulator maker. They make simulators all day, right?
Yeah.
So both for helicopters and airplanes. So that works out very well, that we have expertise, friends in the community who are very interested in making sure that the Parkland Institute for Aviation is as good as it can possibly be. And I think so far mission accomplished. They've been very, very generous to us, actually donating one of those very expensive simulators, and of course we purchased one too. There's a number of other simulators that are in the room, maybe a little bit less complex and less expensive, but they're all branded the same way. We're a Frasca shop, and we like it that way.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for sharing that. I know
Sure.
a lot of our viewers are curious about how it's going. Then when we decided to go into that that industry and take that on, so
Well,
it's
if there's
great to hear that
anybody
it's going well.
who's interested, it doesn't take much to get a flight and practice a little bit and see how it feels, and it may be interesting as a career, a first career or even a different career.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you very much. Something else I wanted to talk about, it was actually a thread that Dr. Lau was speaking about when she was talking about the future of Parkland, and really our mission to bring in individuals in the community wherever they are in their journey, and have them come to Parkland as a destination where they can get wherever it is that they want to go, be it a transfer to a four-year institution or into a higher paying job.
Right.
One of the things that news just from the college is acquiring this Workforce Equity Initiative grant for the college. Can you tell me a little bit about what that is, how it came about, and what it might do for our students?
Sure. I don't know as much as the person who's in charge of the grant knows, certainly, but it's a great thing for Parkland, and it's a great thing for the community. Basically, the idea is we have programs, certificates and degree programs, that take anywhere from a year to 2 years to train somebody to do a specific job. This is more on the career side. Obviously, we have a mission that provides general education courses to students who are interested in transferring on to a university and earning a bachelor's degree and beyond. But really, this is a career focus. How we can get somebody's skills to be employable in an area of need in the community in general, in our 3,000 square mile district, quickly. And there's lots of need, both on the employer side and on the potential student side. So the good news is that the state of Illinois has invested significantly. I think there's $20 million that's been spread around the state very recently, and Parkland has acquired $1.5 million out of that $20 million. We need to spend that money in 1 year. That's quite a challenge. It's a fun challenge, certainly, but the goal is to develop programs, short-term programs, that move students into high-paying jobs, $15 an hour or better, quickly. And the focus is on minority students, those that have maybe a lower socioeconomic status, those that have been typically disenfranchised from the educational system, and help those students get to where they want to be quickly and probably free. So
Yes.
with that kind of money, we're able to offset tuition, childcare needs, maybe transportation, books, fees, just about anything that we can. And that's pretty exciting.
Another area that is really growing and seeing a lot of exciting movement is agriculture,
Right,
precision ag in particular. And so what are some of the latest updates? I know we've established the Midwest Center for Precision Ag.
Right.
But what are the latest updates? Because I think there's a new program we're offering.
Absolutely. So precision ag is a term that's not well understood. We've always had agriculture for a very long time. Predates, obviously, Parkland College. What does the word precision connected with the word agriculture mean? And it's a whole host of things, from using technology to determine where you need to put more fertilizer or water, or where you have too much. How do you get that data? How do you acquire it? How do you manipulate it and use it to improve your yield, which is the ultimate goal? And there's a number of tools that do that, from sensors on combines and planters to drones that people fly over their field and use a different set of sensors to gather that information. But putting it all together and making sense of it is what precision ag is today. There is very little agriculture out there, at least in production, on the production side, that isn't precision in some way. So it's sort of the new norm. Parkland's take on it, including all the things I just described, is a new program that's designed for fertilizer applicators. So these are those large machines. They look sort of like bugs. They sit way up high and drive through the fields and apply fertilizer, and I'm sure other chemicals as needed. The vendors, the people who do that, who own the equipment and fertilize those fields, have a great need for trained applicators. And when I say a great need, we're talking thousands of students, thousands of positions that they have open, that they want to run students through a systemized training program. That's not particularly cheap either. So when you talk 3 or 4 or 5 companies that do that, they have a multi-state reach. So the idea is that our associate degree program in applicator technician technology will serve students not only in our community but in a multi-state area. And that's pretty exciting too. So those companies are well equipped to donate some equipment, to provide some faculty, maybe some curriculum, and do a really interesting new program at Parkland College. It does not exist in very many other community colleges, certainly not in Illinois.
Yeah, it's exciting to have that regional pull potentially into one of our programs, similar to aviation, really.
Right.
When you think about how successful that's been, just based on the uniqueness of having an institute like aviation and then also advanced applicators. So we're thinking outside the box a little bit.
Very much agree.
Great. So switching gears a little bit, thinking about the traditional age student, we talked a lot about career programs and a lot of possibilities there and new developments. But can you talk a little bit about our early college population? So whether they're getting dual credit or they're coming for a ECCA type program, right. We've seen growth there. So can you talk about early college and what it's meant to the institution and how it's benefiting students?
Right. I remember, because I'm old, the early days of dual credit. I was at a different institution. I was at Danville Area Community College at the time. Young guy, 22 or 23 years old, and I remember sitting in a meeting room full of department chairs, and they were talking about this new concept where students who were still in high school would possibly be able to enroll in a college-level course taught by college faculty primarily at that time, and earn college credit that counted both toward their high school diploma and their college career. And that was sort of off-putting to folks. It was brand new. It hadn't been done very much across the country, but we tried it. We, meaning the state of Illinois, tried it. All the community colleges, in one form or another over the next few years, got into this thing called dual credit. And boys, it exploded. So we're today serving well over 900 students in our community college district in both career and general education courses. So the idea is you get a leg up. You get a collection of college credits under your belt on a transcript that are transferable, where if they're transfer courses, before you leave high school. And we've two benefits. One, we've seen students get all the way up to an associate's degree. Some have actually earned their 2-year degree before they finished high school, which is no small task. That's quite a commitment on a student's behalf. But most of those courses are free. There's not tuition associated with it in most cases. If it's on campus or one of our faculty teach it, of course we have to charge tuition. But if it's done at the high school by a high school faculty member who's qualified, usually it's free. And there's no better way to get college credit than free, right?
Yeah, that's a great proposition for families and students looking to save some money in terms of their college education. How has that changed sort of the group of students coming from high school? No longer are they necessarily starting with the very basic general education courses, and so they're coming with some credits already under their belt.
Sure.
So how has that changed things?
Well, the first offerings of dual credit were gen eds in particular, general education courses. And you generally had the students who had some flexibility in their schedule, some maybe the higher ACT scores enrolling in those courses, because it was a scary thing. There wasn't a lot of support systems around it. Certainly we didn't have online programs or maybe the tutorial systems in place that we do now. But what's really changed is the on-campus career-based courses. So things like welding or automotive technology. We're looking at teacher education. We're looking at criminal justice. We're looking at all kinds of programs that haven't traditionally been offered through dual credit for a variety of reasons. We have a great partner with the Education for Employment folks, which is an organization that serves multiple school districts in our area. That's really organized this ECCA, or Early College and Career Academy, at Parkland College. So students from a variety of high schools, I think there's 12 involved, come here in the morning, spend most of the morning in class with our faculty and other students enrolled in that program, go back home to their high school probably at lunchtime and finish the rest of the day there. And it works out very, very well. A lot of health professions programs, lots more to be done, lots more program growth potential as well.
And we've also looked to replicate that sort of ECCA model, but on the transfer side,
Right.
with the ETA. So what is the ETA, and why might that be a draw for students? Because there's a certificate
Sure.
at the end of it.
There is. ETA, or the Early Transfer Academy, is really general education courses. So this is aimed at the student who wants to go on to a university and earn that baccalaureate degree. So we have a collection of courses that add up to about 36 to 38 credit hours. It's called the Gen Ed Core Curriculum, GECC. And those courses are guaranteed to transfer to any public university in the state of Illinois. Almost all the privates take it, and it probably goes across the country to any university with little trouble. So the idea is that if a student is motivated, and it's not an easy thing to do to get in the ETA, it requires some effort and some time and some dedication. That cohort, that group of students, stays together for 2 years, and they move through this collection of courses and earn this certificate that you mentioned at the end, which is a great ticket into a university.
I was reading a report today. It was looking at transfer trends in the state, and so notice once again that we're at that top of the list in
Right.
terms of transfers, the number of students transferring to the University of Illinois. So we've sort of proven ourselves in that area as well.
Sure, and the university is appreciative, and they understand that Parkland sends them the most transfer students, and obviously we're only 5 miles away, so that sort of makes sense. But what might not be as well known is that our students do extraordinarily well at the University of Illinois. When students transfer in, we track them. The university tracks them, and they look at their grade point average 2 semesters or so after they transfer and see how they're doing. And we get those reports on a regular basis. I've been looking at them for probably 18 years now. And without fail, every year, you see that Parkland transfer students do just as well, and in many cases better, in terms of GPA than students who started there as native freshmen. And that bar for entry, or the admission criteria that the university uses, isn't getting any lower. They require a good ACT score, or GPA, or class standing that's of sufficient level. So I think it really says something about the quality of students or the quality of the instruction that Parkland provides to our students.
Absolutely. So just switching gears to more nuts and bolts type things here at the institution. One of the things thinking about all of this learning and all of even the studio that we're in today is thinking about our buildings and our facilities.
Right.
I know some of, we built the Union a few years back, but one of the latest initiatives related to our buildings is in efficiency and
Right.
thinking about, green building practices, but then also energy efficiency. So what is the college doing around that? I know there's lots of national discussion about making that a priority, but what are we doing here at Parkland?
Well, we have a couple of visible ways that you can see the institution's commitment to sustainability. The first is we're a member of the Illinois Green Economy Network, which is a statewide organization, obviously in Illinois, that helps institutions find grant dollars. They have some monies themselves to help make the institution, the individual campuses, more sustainable, more green. We've taken advantage of that over the years in the form of solar panels. So there's a number of buildings on campus. You can't really see them, unfortunately, because they're on top of a roof that generally is a flat roof. But there are 2 buildings on campus that have an extensive solar array already on them. The T building and the Park Hill Applied Technology Center both have solar panels on them. They don't generate a huge amount, but it's allowed us to test the waters, see how that works, what sort of performance they provide. And we've taken another step, a fairly big step, on campus where we've dedicated about 7 or 8 acres on the northwest side of campus to put in a large-scale solar array. So we've contracted with a company to buy the energy that's produced by those solar panels. It should power about 10% of the entire campus, no small thing, at a fixed rate for 20 years, which is a good rate. And the company maintains those solar panels, and we get the benefit of cleanly produced energy that helps offset our costs. Another set of measures we've taken are building sensors, room sensors, in that most all of our classrooms and offices have a little motion sensor that will turn off the lights if there's no movement in the room, and it will also reduce or increase the energy usage. If it's summer, it will let the temperature rise a bit. If it's winter, the opposite happens. And we've managed to save fairly significant dollars by that investment. And the investment was paid for largely through grant monies, so it's not even dollars that we've had to spend out of the institutional coffers. So the last set of numbers I saw looked like about $50,000 a year in reduced energy costs, some water reduction. Recycling costs have gone down, and use of the recycling system is going to go up with a new contract that we've just signed with a multi-stream recycling company in the area. All good things. We also have a sustainability committee on campus that helps
They're helping to coordinate many of these things, I imagine.
Absolutely, absolutely. And they have a green revolving fund, and that's a fairly significant pot of money that is replenished. They use that money to do projects that create energy savings, which in turn saves money, and the money that's saved goes back into the revolving fund. So we have a self-sustained fund.
Well, Dr. Ramage, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thanks.
Really appreciate it. That's it for this episode of the Parkland Report. I hope you'll join us next time.